The key thing, I think, is that 57% of nurses that answered the surveys, that's about 600, said that they were dangerously understaffed on their ward or unit, either some of the time or all of the time. And in fact, 10% of those nurses said they were dangerously understaffed all of the time. So that's 1 in 10 wards, potentially. The government, I know, has said very recently that it is down to local hospitals to ensure that they have the right number. That's very true, they do. But equally, the government could play a role in that for years there's been calls to have a set of minimum baseline for safe staffing, which they do in some other countries, parts of the US, I believe, but they've so far resisted that call. But if they provide the right leadership and make sure their trusts get their house in order, then I think there's a role at every layer. There are new nurses coming through, but there are still many leaving at the other side. And their figures, when they talk about clinical staff, include doctors, medics as well, of which we know there has been quite a large number coming through at the end of their training recently. And that's all well and good. Of course, it's great to have lots of doctors, but we need the nurses as well. They're the ones that are doing the bedside everyday care, particularly around the compassion agenda, things like that. If you're running around flat out, busy, really busy, the first thing that is probably going to stop happening is that you're not going to be able to stop and have a talk with the patient, have those regular sort of contacts. It's going to be very much doing the basics, checking bloods, blood pressure, things like that. It's the compassion that is probably going to be the victim of the being busy, perhaps. Whether we could say lives are at risk, I wouldn't like to say, but certainly poor care and the potential for patients being harmed, absolutely. One of our stats shows that 76% of nurses have filled out an incident report form or to show that there was either an incident or a risk of incident where a patient could be harmed over the last 12 months, which seems like an awful lot. But most worryingly, a large percentage of those nurses who had filled in those forms said that they'd not received any feedback from managers or their trust on what had happened.